Okay, all right, you're with me here today. All right, what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about some issues here with Michael Crosby. I'm a gubernatorial candidate. All righty, so what we're going to do is deal with the situation as to where things are at and what things are going on, and be able to basically understand what all the stuff is. So, if we're going to go back a little bit here,
payment, nearly $1 million.
we basically
And
got
of course, the rest of it is nearly
some interesting
$100,000
stuff
in
here.
pension
Okay,
payout.
so
California taxpayers are facing $500 billion worth of unfunded debt for bloated, gold-plated California pensions for state and local government employees. But guess what? It's about to get worse as California politicians just passed a law allowing double dipping and more pension spiking in this beleaguered system. Coming up, we'll tell you what they just did, how much it's going to cost you, and what we're doing to fight back. I'm Carl DeMaio, Chairman of Performance. Spiking vehicle. But now we are creating it once again here in California. And that's what AB 1054 does, is it creates this deferred retirement option plan. There is the only no vote, and it would be Carl DeMaio as the one nay vote in the state legislature, and there it is, a no vote. I am just shocked that more of my colleagues did not vote this down, because I rose on the assembly floor and laid some of the things out that I'm about to tell you. First,
okay, I'm going to address Carl here in this because, Carl, this is weird when he's the only guy, the only person that says, hey, wait a minute, I think there's something wrong with this. And he's going to tell you all about it. And he's got a lot of insight to explain what's wrong with it. Now, so me as the gubernatorial candidate, I have to step up to the plate and do something brand new, completely, totally different, and be a genius. I have to be a genius. So I'm going to be a genius right now and explain how we have a problem with a bunch of people that are throwing peanuts all around, all over the place, and people are generally running to vote for them. This is a sensitive issue because this is people's retirement. This is people who are talking about retiring, how they're going to retire, what they're entitled to. And it's like a frenzy. Once a frenzy starts, everybody goes, oh man, if we don't do this, we're not going to get our cookies. And I'm not going to say that viewpoint isn't realistic compared to the moments that might actually be happening. But the reality is genius needs to step in. And I'm going to step in here as a genius and explain how they should have done everything different, how to not make it a burden on the taxpayers. And I'm going to explain exactly how it will not be a burden on the taxpayers if we did things my way. And you'll get 10 times more value. 10 times more value. So let me talk about this, because basically the understanding here is these people want to make something that's going to be a big, huge burden on you. And this has been handled before in the past, where basically people were looking at the way some of this stuff would work, and they actually removed it. They put out a measure and they removed a whole bunch of high, crazy extraction of money that was burdening and bankrupting people. Because the way they end up doing this stuff, they have to bring a whole bunch more taxes in. Has to come from someplace, right? Well, actually, that's wrong, but I'll explain that. We have a problem with people that no longer follow the Constitution of the United States. They are not builders, they are destroyers. They are going to get more money by using multiple overlapping demographic attacks, literally, weaponized attacks that are designed to do something. They're designed to divest certain people while giving other people rewards. So many people in business already know this one. Not all of them. Some people in business can't do what some other people can do. Because certain other people in business, certain ways, they understand how they can lay everything off and say, well, that's okay. I'm just going to make all my taxes tax deductible, declaring them part of my business expense of operating. Therefore, they're going to constantly always deduct all money the government wants as a form of basically expense of operating business. And someone says, well, how does that work? That's confusing. You need an attorney, maybe two of them, and some accountants to explain that to you. It's actually really complex. But everybody else, well, you're screwed, okay? You're just basically screwed. So let's continue with this. I'm going to explain how it is that the reality is what they're doing is not constitutional. It's actually illegal, okay? And I'm going to show you how to get 10 times more value. Now, the Constitution of the United States starts out with something that's actually very, very interesting. Okay, what happened? Okay, why did that stop? Okay, we're back again here. Let me explain some things here that a lot of people just don't seem to understand. And that basically is that the Constitution of the United States is very interesting. You know, if we're going to go to the Constitution of the United States and we're going to read the original, okay, and the original is basically something that some people have never bothered to read as to what actually is written, you know. So this is where very few people actually seem to understand what is actually done here. So when you go here and you go to promote the general welfare, okay, welfare as it is today did not exist. Okay, there was no welfare office and they cut you this money and gave you food stamps. Didn't happen that way. Not that people weren't generous. Let me tell you how this happened, basically. Part of the way this happened is really interesting because what we had was a system of direct Department of the Treasury. You see, there's a lot of these. We're on Constitution number 5, by the way. And there's a lot of pre-existing contracts that people don't even understand. You don't even hear people talking about them. It's very in-depth, very complex, okay? So basically what we had here was the Department of Treasury, okay, which established local offices that were basically responsible for something. And what they were responsible for was General Land Office, okay? Okay, before the creation of the General Land Office, the Department of Treasury was basically in charge, and this would be between 1789 and 1812. Now, there's a lot of things that happened that are very important, but there was stuff that happened before 1789. I'm going to explain that at some point as well, maybe a different program. Now, the thing is that as we deal with this, we have to deal with these other things where basically we had things known as the Land Ordinance of 1785. This comes in much later. Now, it's important to understand we also had the 1812 War in there for a while. Now, earlier we had between 1740 and 1790, we've got this merger thing because we had the control of British control, but we had our own stuff happening, you know. So you had these different parties basically that were involved in uh, land stuff, basically, you know, in managing land and settlements. Things were related to land and settlements, and you actually had a lot of land that might be given away for free. So if we're going to go back further and we're looking at our before the revolution colonial system, here we have a system that was dealing with the handing out of 50 acres. And in some cases, anyone who paid passage and could prove that they paid passage to the United States or for someone else would basically get land for free. This is how you ended up coming up with some of these indentured servant contracts that were very lucrative. You know, by today's standards, you would be working for 4 years. You'd end up with a house, a truck, a cow, some pigs, maybe a mule, and a whole lot of chickens. Okay, plus a bunch of hand tools. You'd own your house. Okay, and the land. You don't own this land. You know, it'd be like you going to work for somebody and making today probably 1.2 to 1.4 million dollars in 4 years, leverage wise. To notice it today. So here we had in these early areas, basically, where we're dealing with the colonial systems that were 1700 to 1775. Now, the thing is you had all these different people who were governors and whatnot. And later on, most people will remember things more like Homestead Act and legalization of squatting and a bunch of other little different stuff. You know, different stuff like, you know, people are going to remember, William Henry Harrison, you know, stuff like that, you know. So, and we had some other stuff, you know, we had these things that dealt with Oregon Territory and whatnot, you know, these different types of things that were happening later on. Now, there's different ways of looking at this, and this is what I'm going to explain. But again, you know, when we're talking about to actually promote the situation of welfare. Welfare meant success, okay? Welfare meant your personal property. It meant success. It meant everything to do with you managing and getting control of assets. So we had a lot of things that were happening. You had a lot of these people were doing land deals and managing land, doing all kinds of incentive deals for people. You had George Washington's brothers were involved in different types of land sale deals. Now, I've already talked before, if you've got some of my stuff, about Category 1 versus Category 2 for those people who are involved in the great land purchases. It's very, very important. Now, what I've just been covering is pre-great land purchase. So you have a group of people which are pre-great land purchases. Now, for all intents and purposes in our modern time at this point in time, what we have is all of this is basically merged, so to speak, where, people's, your lineage, is very important that way, and so we have all of this stuff where we're basically dealing with everybody's blood has basically been promoted, okay? So we're promoting the general welfare, okay, and it's most people understand it as to ourselves and our posterity. Now, unfortunately, different wording was used, different spelling, and there was a different style of language understood by our forefathers. So you had a lot more deeper meanings into things. Today, we're more item specific as to what we're using in language. So there's always this problem with people who have documents who are basically reinterpreting. There's all of this stuff there where they're reinterpreting stuff, and they're constantly losing parts of the meaning respective to the words. We the people, and all this other stuff. So when you have these annotated versions, we're losing stuff here. We're losing deep meaning of things that are crucially important. And here is a very, very serious problem. So as we continue right here, we're dealing with rather some really interesting factors. And that deals with, again, first of all, the annotated records that you're seeing are constantly in error. They're constantly screwed up. And people are going, boy, you're just really horrible with that, aren't you? But I'm very serious. See, the original meanings of welfare were to promote ourselves and our posterity. In other words, to promote ourselves and the future of our children. Okay, the future of our children continuing on. So this is where all the land rights stuff comes in. This is where there were different types of rules and regulations and thoughts. You had cohesiveness of how do we protect ourselves and our future, our children's futures, yet still get together as a collective of people, basically as capitalists. And this is where you have the transition over where we end up having colonialism, which was British colonialism, and all of a sudden, boom, it's like a shock value. Very rapidly, people changed into a new form of colonialism, which is American colonials, which is different because people would refer for a short period of time, oh, the colonials, the Americans, yeah, okay. And rapidly we changed and we became, the revolutionaries, and then we were referred to also by people as the revolutionaries. Yes, the Americans, the colonials. The colonials. So it's very important because modern colonialism at that time, for what that was, is we were constitutional. We were colonial constitutional capitalist. And many people don't understand this. They're just totally missing out on this. So when you'd have people that might come to the country, you would have people that would get sponsored by stewards, landowners, and whatnot. So you would have people that would sometimes have a family. They spend every dime just to get here. And there would literally be people who were part of the different little stewards organizations that would see a family come in the docks and go over and talk to them. And sometimes they would, and these people were like, okay, well, we got here, we're looking for something to do. And says, well, look here, come over to the stewards meeting. This is where it's at. And they might hand them a little piece of paper and it had a map on it. It showed them where to go, time of day, told them. And sometimes they would find families where they would see them eating and they could see that these people were poor. These people were buying the wrong kind of food, just anything they could get in their mouth. And they'd go over to them and say, hey, look, I want you to come to the stewards meeting. You've got a family here. Bring your whole family. Bring your whole family. Come to the stewards meeting. And a lot of times they would talk to these people for a while before they bring this up and do this. So there was a form of a screening, a little bit of vetting, so to speak, to make an assessment as to who these people were, and what they believed in life. Things would be asked just to see what their attitude would be on stuff. So you had a little bit of testing. It was very raw, but then again, it could be very rich in forms of conversation. And most people were not as sophisticated. Not like today where you have people that can be harboring horrible, bloodthirsty killings that they did in the past and they're terrorists, but they're good actors and you wouldn't possibly know that they're bloodthirsty killers. But back then, back then people were simpler. So they'd invite people up. They would be at the stewards meeting. And some of these people were poor. They had nothing. They just told them, the beginner says, no, we don't have anything. We don't know what to do. We'll come to the steward. What are we going to do there? They're going to want us to join. We don't have any money. Just come to the stewards meeting. We're going to hook you up. You don't have any land or anything. No, okay, come to the stewards meeting. So they would introduce them and someone would say, hey, look, I found a family over here and I want them to join. They seem all right to me. And I would like the stewards here to help them, and maybe Harry over there can take them down to the land claim office, or somebody take them and help them to stake out a piece of land here. So and let's verify this out. They've got a passage ticket right here. Here's a passage ticket. That they paid to come here. So let's hook them up with some land. Let's have them become a member. And by the way, these guys don't have any money right now. can we pass the hat real quick? And so if you throw some pennies in, throw some pennies in, pass the hat. Let's give these people a little bit of change in their pockets so they buy some more food. And these are some of the things that would happen, and you would have stewards spend time alternating, going out of their way to continue to interview people. And this was part of the vetting process. And there's, this is like, you just don't see people talking about this kind of stuff. You almost never see it appear in motion pictures or anything like that. But it was a very real part about basically conveying something was different. Going to stewards meetings sometimes was almost like going to church, which, by the way, if you went to a stewards meeting and you were showing up there for the first time, you had preachers that would be there that would also walk up and say, "Hi, how you doing? You need to come to our church." It can be competitive, by the way, because you got 3 different preachers come up to you. No, you got to come to our church. Competition. Okay. So these were important things that would happen. There was a very big commitment to the steward meetings. Find out what's wrong, listen to people's lectures, listen to people's proposals, and it was all about people's problems. I'm going to tell you right now, they were constantly talking about, we need more money up by map point, yada, yada, on and on this would go. So this was real development. And the reason behind the revolution is that we wanted to build our own treasury, and that we were supposed to have constant access to the treasury. That was the deal. Now, we started to see that to manifest after the first portion of the earliest Revolutionary War, where we finally got to the point where the British subsided for a bit, and it seems like we were being accepted, so then all of a sudden it's like, now we want the Treasury direct access. And this is one of the reasons why the Treasury also was connected, or as though the Land Department, because lands were considered for a while as though part of the Treasury. So you would be able to get loans and money to do what? To develop property, to develop real estate, because real estate was considered a hard asset. That was considered as though real money. People knew in colonial America there was not much gold. You couldn't really find much in the way of gold. Not that there wasn't some, but it was kind of few and far between. So what was real was silver and pennies. Pennies, copper, brass, bronze, and silver. And people would use that for currency, and they would also trade a lot. There was a lot of direct trade. You had a lot of people that would do market trades. They would take a wagon or a cart, and they would constantly meet up. These things were happening bi-weekly, basically. Sometimes it would be happening every day of the week. There would be some kind of farmer's market someplace, and people would constantly be trading things. So the idea financially is to get to the big hard points. That's where everyone wants to go. They want to escape the portions of agrarianism that I'm talking about. And they want to get to the big points. And the big points were, we were new citizens. We were our own citizens. We fought for our freedom. And with that, we get direct access to the Treasury. We go right down and say, here's who I am. Here's my steward's ID. Not that it was an ID. I'm a member of the stewards. You can verify it or whatever. I need to borrow some money to develop some land, and this is the land. The guy said, okay, what are you going to develop? And they'd write out, and they would inspect it. They'd go, okay, this is you on this land. Okay, fine. We'll help you with money or vouchers. And there was a lot of voucher stuff that occurred where you needed, I need building materials. Say, okay, well, here's a voucher. You can go down to and go around and see if somebody will accept the voucher. Sometimes they won't, because you had different people that had different ideas, and there was a lot of problems with the very first currency. But this was something that was eventually going to be, no longer a problem. We were going to eventually have a stable treasury filled full of things. I talk about this in different lectures from time to time. I've done it in the past. I don't know if you can still find some of my existing material on YouTube anymore. It's hard to keep things up when you keep coming under violent attack by people. I'm telling you, it's really impossible. Have 8 different locations hit at the same time. That's simply not possible. So when you're getting doxxed and the dangers, like right now, I've had people shooting at me, one of the reasons you don't see me grandstanding up here, look at my pretty face. Shouldn't I be in a beauty contest? Oh my goodness, Don't you like me? Yeah, let's make this a memeism, popularity contest. We can do that, right? Well, people are shooting at me, and you have people that have to wear masks right now. And you have a bunch of people that are pretending that they don't know what's going on. So I've had people that were taking images of me and putting it on social media and putting the hit out on me. Okay, and this is part of how I came under so many violent attacks. And this also deals with treason committed by people like Julie Su, Shirley Weber, Rob Bonta, the base understanding that Gavin Newsom never had the right to shut people's businesses down. You can't shut an archive down and not pay financial compensation. You can't do that. But they did it anyhow, So we have mass genocide that has been occurring throughout California. We have people dying in the streets. We have Greenlanders. People in Greenland are looking in horror because they don't have homeless people. I don't think they've had anybody die being homeless in Greenland in the last 5 years. So comparatively, they're in shock when they look over and see California and see what's going on. So what's wrong with what these people are doing is they're not doing the backing system. See, the backing system, where basically what we would be doing to explain this to you is we're supposed to be promoting our posterity. We're supposed to be promoting growth, okay? Welfare, okay? Not welfare like you say today. Welfare was to be promoting construction, asset development, asset protection, okay? And your assets would be real estate, okay? Your farm, your ranchette, your ranch, your blacksmith, your wood shop, your whatever it was that you were doing, that is what we would assist you in promoting. The whole idea was kind of like a no-fall policy. Hey, we'll find a way to work this out, as long as you're committed to it. As long as you're committed, and as long as you want to keep working, we'll find a way to hook you up. And that's what it was all about, I mean, the more you could work, the more you could develop. And the more you could develop, the more money you could make. So if you had people coming in off the boat who could prove that they made payment, you could get 50 acres of land. That's back to the British. And you could still get stuff like that. And so you had people promoting stuff saying, great, man, great. Send people across the sea to find us families. And we'll pay for their passage if they'll sign a contract. These were good contracts, by the way. These were generally way different than the stories you hear about slavery, because slavery in the South really was completely different than what was happening in the northern earlier colonial areas, because you had people that were making money. In other words, they'd go down and say, look, I got proof I paid passage for these people. And they'd lay it down. The guy go, oh, okay, what do you got here? You paid for 1, 2, 3, 4 tickets. Oh, okay, what do you want? I want a voucher for 4 50-acre parcels. Oh, here you go. You've got a voucher. So then he would go to these people. He's with these people. So look, here, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you 50 acres. You get the 50 acres, okay? Boom, right here. Let's go out and look at it. You like this one? I got several more. Which one do you like? Okay, because it's up for grabs. Oh, you like this one better? Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, let's do that. Okay, fine, you'll be hooked up. Okay, you worked 4 years. Now he's going to turn around and say, okay, we got a schedule. No, we got to get you going here. You need a cow. Let me hook you up with the cow over here. You're going to need a cart. You're going to need a mule. You're going to need some chickens and all this stuff. Here, come over in this area of the property. Here, we'll hook you up. You can pick out here, here, and here. Have your kids come over. Pick these up here. I'll loan you the cages. You can take them up over there. And, basically we've got some lumber over here. I'll hook you up here. We'll keep track of all this. I'm going to give you enough lumber to build a house. I'm going to give you enough lumber to build yourself a storage building. Another, I'm going to give you enough for what you build so you can build a separate outhouse. That's where you go to the bathroom. So all these things would be part of the deal, and they would be spending their time, at least one of the family members, working basically to get things going. Now, it depends how old your kids were too. See, because if your kids were, 10, 12, 15 years old, they could keep things going on the property, on that 50 acres. And then so you could have not just the guy working in the fields or whatever he needed to work on. Oh, you know how to do blacksmithing. Hey, that's great. Come over here. No, come over here. Okay, so end of the week could roll around. Hey, look, you need some clothes here. I got some clothes I bought wholesale discount. You just go ahead and pick yourself a set of clothes right there. Here, I don't have much. Here you go. Let me give you a few coins here. So you can go to town and buy a little something, get the kids some candy, stuff like that. If there's something else that you particularly need, let me know, even though these people would already know. So they're going to make bank, and these people are going to work hard for 4 years. They're going to get the 4 acres of land. They're getting all these materials. They're getting hand tools. They're getting all this stuff. This was basically a good indentured contract, because then at the end of it, it's like, okay, you did a really, really good job. You guys all worked hard, and your wife worked half the day for us too. Here's $300. Here's $400. In some cases, I found some $500, $600. In other words, you worked your 4 years, you're done. We were giving you a little bit of money every week, and boom, here you go. Here's $500. Here's $400. Okay, now you got cash. Because back then, you could buy people's homestead for $400 or $500. Like, you'd have somebody come walking up that were rich, and they go around and people had signs, hey, homestead's for sale. And people go, really? Is it a good one? Yes, it is. And they're like, okay, well, let's go over here. I just came out of the bank. I don't have any money with me. You don't want to get robbed. And so you're going to go out and you're going to look at this stuff. And if somebody has something you like, you go, this is nice. It's already built. And they're like, I'll give you $500 for it. And they're like, 50 acres, everything that's here, as is, boom, here you go, we'll take it. Why? Because these people had already been around for 4 years. They already traveled around a little bit, and they already had a chance to make another deal. Like with the guy they had a contract with. Some people would sit there and go, oh, I'll work for another year for 50 acres and $200. Then they're like, yeah, we can do that. We'll do that. And then they would also be able to group their crops together and sell them. So you would have a tally of bulk of everybody that had some, so they could negotiate, and ships would come in and pick up certain types of products. So a guaranteed wholesale on some of the stuff that way. So you didn't have to worry about where you're going to sell your stuff. You didn't necessarily get the best deal, but you got enough to keep going, which was the main point. Because people could end up getting everything running good. The family's running it. The wife runs it. I'm going to go into town and get a job. So the guy's like, yeah, I'm a blacksmith. So he'd go into town and he'd get a job at a blacksmith or whatever, a factory, whatever was coming up. So the self-perpetuation item of the treasury is exactly what we need to do at a modern sense. Now, my modern designs for mass modeling are completely different from the standpoint I modernized everything. So the way to do things is say, oh, yeah, you've got a government job. Oh, you're going to be working here for us for a long time. You're a cop or a firefighter. Okay, here's the deal. We're going to guarantee a loan that's going to be able to cover you buying or acquiring land, however that happens, and getting it constructed. And you're going to be the owner builder. And we're going to do this and guarantee you one every year, 7 years in a row. Okay? This is how you protect your retirement. But see, now what you're doing is you're guaranteeing new construction, and all that new construction creates new hard assets. And the appraisers would come out and appraise that, and that would be used for justification, just like the British did. Just like the British did before the Revolution, as justification to print new notes because new assets were invented that didn't exist before. You see, that's the balance to facilitate trade properly. And that's part of the original understanding of the economic physics that we were fighting for respective to our Revolutionary War. So when we have these people that are Marxist, and they're socialist, they are following a criteria of engineered demographical weapons. You have to remember, we fought two great wars with basically the Royal German Empire and their syndicate of investors. And that's not even necessarily including the big banker deals. So those are separate documentaries we could go through. So yeah, all this stuff was an invention. They circumvented things. They infiltrated everything, anything from scholastics, universities, to medical associations, to sponsoring people for scientific or medical papers. Oh, we have to have all your data to verify it. Well, they're copying all the data. It was this massive data heist is what it was. It's a con job. And then they used that. They had something called the Royal German Spy Institute, and it never had less than 200 people there. And you'd have like 30 of these people would be like military grade, highly intelligent people with sheepskins that were psychiatrists, and these people were evil. And the orders had come through, we want you to design demographic weaponry. We want you to design how we can make organizations and companies that will do things all over the globe where we can make profit at the same time by destabilizing other people in their lives. And this is where you have things come in like code enforcement. Code enforcement is something that a bunch of idiots have adopted because they thought that these were modern management situations that come through all this great wokeness in universities. And what it is this is materials that are poison that were created mostly via the Royal German Empire and their syndicates. See, because they'd reuse data, they would pay people, rearrange this data to do this, rearrange this data to say that. Okay, now rearrange this data into a book. Now rearrange the data into this. They were constantly re-engineering this stuff. So you have people that were booking all this weird stuff, Marxism and all this other stuff. They were all on the payroll. Lenin was on the payroll. Joseph Stalin on the payroll, two payrolls. They were all on two payrolls. The Royal German Empire Spy Department and the syndicate. They were members of the syndicate as well. So that's a double dip payment deal. Okay, so once again, we have double dip payment people that basically are involving themselves in engineering something to become poison to destabilize governments because they were diabolically opposed to them and they wanted to take them over in any zone they could, whether it was business, economics, or whatever it was, you see. So they bring all these things forward. So we have all these people and they're Marxist, and again, Karl Marx was on two payrolls. He was a verified Royal German Empire Spy Institute employee on the payroll, as well as also he was a syndicate member, the investment syndicate, and they would partner constantly together with the Royal German Empire. So here we have all this deep poison. We fought two great wars, and some people have commented on this. Okay, and I'm just going to tell you, it's like in some ways we haven't won the war yet. We still have all this baggage and this material that these people created that still hasn't been done with. Obvious. Russia #1 target. They killed 140 million people. Gross, really gross. They used the demographic information for maps. This is how brand new high-speed world records in mass murder occurred because Joseph Stalin got a hold of that data that was being milked by the activities of the German Spy Institute and the syndicate. And they were all reworking this data, reselling it again and again for books and anything from A to Z. Okay? So they end up permeating this stuff that they've arranged. Engineered material, designed. I mean, Venus flytrap. If you don't know what a Venus flytrap is, go look it up, okay? So these are things that are engineered to be diabolical organizations. Literally, organizations designed to be utilized as though they are a weapon of mass destruction. So when we have these people following these philosophies of communism and socialism in our own government, these people are Marxist, okay? These people are diabolically opposed to the Constitution of the United States. They want nothing to do with solid physics, economic engineering. Because if you do that, we're constantly promoting more assets. What does that mean? It means that our dollar is continuously stable based upon the fact that we keep developing things that other people would love to have. Like, oh, that's a wonderful house. I would love to buy that. So, just pop on Google Maps, see how much land we have. And then later on, you can understand how I'm talking about the great land purchases and respectively restoring what was promised. The government didn't have any money when it came to the great land purchases. They were out of money. So they promised us stock, residuals from the minerals, and dividends from the deals. There was all these special deals, railroad, all kinds of stuff that would come about, all these deals, and we're supposed to get a cut, okay, and have staking rights. And 92% of people have been burned, okay? So you have these people that were not part of the process, basically. They didn't pay any money. We have a lot of Johnny-come-latelys. They're in neither the pre-group or Group 1 or Group 2. Okay, we have one more third group that's manifesting we need to talk about. Where's that's going to be at? Because the land stock is basically worth $80 million, okay, per person for Group 1. And the land stock is worth $10 million as a value because there's all these other powers hooked to it. Why? Because the modern day version right here and now is we have tremendous leverage as a collective capitalist organization to be able to get the best value. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to say, yes, I would like to order 8 cases or 12 cases of no salt canned goods at wholesale and be able to pick them up at a no frills warehouse. This is the kind of power that you have that is not being properly cultivated. And with me as governor, I would immediately restore all of these capabilities and completely end up phasing out all taxes. You see, so, because some people, I'm committed, there's very few people, apparently there's me and there's Chad Bianco that are actually committed to phasing out all taxes. Well, I know exactly how to do it, okay? And I know exactly how to stimulate growth on levels that are mind-boggling. So as part of my original campaign, going back all the way back to the recall election, which they told me, no, you can't run in a recall election. No. Blacklisting there, and then again, it just keeps repeating as they're attacking me, as they're ordering all my businesses shut down. I have an archive, information pertaining to national security, and it just goes on and gets worse and worse. And the blacklisting turns into treason. And now the Constitution says, hey, the core of my camp has been attacked. These are acts of war, defined as acts of war. And these people want to put in modern law and ignore. See, they want to invent things that are diabolically opposed to the Constitution, and they are not legal. They are not constitutional, and they need to be eliminated because now they're committing, look how many people we have in the street. This is genocide. Mass overlapping destabilization engineering from books that they learned that were developed and rooted all the way back to the Royal German Empire. Okay, this is not a game, okay? These people are enemies of the state. They are enemies of the Constitution, and they are your enemy. Okay, they're a bunch of clowns throwing peanuts. They don't want to rebuild your wallet. They don't want to help you build and diversify and salvage your labor. These people are diabolically opposed to anything that comes close to a Christ the Carpenter philosophy. So I figured I'd lay this out and try to show you people the original vision and what the contracts actually are that we're supposed to be working with. Because when I saw Carl going out of the way, he's the one guy that says there's something wrong with this. Let me step in here and say, excuse me, can I be the genius here at the table? I hope I've done a good job for you. I hope, it's doing the right thing to walk up and say, hey, Carl, that was a good eyeball. And you know what? You're the only one that voted against it. You have a lot of guts to stand up and say, hey, people, there's something wrong with this, and there's all this extra liability because these people are doing it all the wrong way. So I figure I'm going to come in and really talk about qualifications to do this the right way. And then I can talk about my fleet, okay? My fleet of vehicles where I was bringing mobily starting out. I was just going to start out with a dozen RVs converted with Wi-Fi, 1 mile range, basically. Some of them were a little shorter, and say, look, here, plug in, here's the Wi-Fi, here's the landing pages. Boom, let me show you 1,200 pages, 1,200 different issues that I'm working with. Now, help me with this. Help me with these issues. This is a no holds barred, wide open, mass AI addressing of all of your problems. I'm going to solve them all. Let's solve them all. I'm telling you right now, when I come out with this stuff, there are more people scared to death in government of me right now than